So give it up for Sharon McPhee, you guys.
I'm short. Hi, everybody. Are you ready for this? I am here to rabble-rouse. I am here to tell you my story about 1950s when I was growing up. And I'm going to ask you to please bear with me because it's very, very graphic. It's very, very true. I entered a contest. There was an old lady. She wanted to find out the truth. So she went into a time machine and she went back to the 1950s and she wanted to find out about her mother, what she did, and what her father, what she did, and the terrible times that we had to face in the 1950s. So I'm going to read you the story that I wrote. It's about an old lady with a black coat. I forgot my hat. If it was a 1920s hat, you would have loved it. Okay. And she walked into the train station. She got zapped from the train station and she walked around and she looked around and there was a lot of people running and scurrying around. So you got to imagine, this is a train station in 1950. Everybody's running to go everywhere. So they were very, very busy. This is me. Black hat. I'm blind in my right eye. I am so deaf I can't hear you scream and holler and tell me to stop when you will. Just yell at me and just tell me, wave your arms if it's too much for you to understand. Okay, I was deaf. I was disoriented for a second when I got zapped in there. I stopped a gentleman to ask for directions and time. I'm a 70-year-old time traveler who knew the right person at the right time. That granted me my recurring 20/20 vision to manipulate reality as I choose fit to find the truth. I am a 1950s Bonnie and Clyde's daughter, and I was charged with a hefty price to see myself go to those train stations and find the truth in Chicago's portal. The Union Station is where I landed. I had landed in this depot before. I followed my mother, Mary, who was there at the same moment. You can see her walking through the doors in the background, carrying her Spanish guitar. There was a young man walking to his train, too. They brushed their arms, passerbyers. Their eyes were as a glance. She's rushing to perform and singing in English and Croatian for the troops that came home from World War II. I watched her work weekends as a soda jerk to save enough money to buy her cowgirl boots and her cowgirl outfit. She was ready to compete. She won 4 times. 4 times in the, I'm sorry, most of you probably won't know, but there was a place called the Morris B. Sachs Amateur Hour. And they're broadcasted on TV and radio. And she was thrilled when Mary was cut songs by her records for LP vinyl records. I listened to them all the time. I sat in the front stage when Mary was opening act for her idols. She sang, I wanna be a cowboy sweetheart. And when she sang it with all her heart, and she won. She won 4 times. She won a gold watch. And she won all kinds of record cutting albums, and she made all the records. She introduced her favorite idols, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. And she got their autograph because I sat in the pews and I watched her, and I cherished that autograph. I saw Mary go for their autographs, and I cherished it. So all Mary's stardom tales in her 1945 and 1950s diaries, they were all true. No room for rumors, because I followed her and I checked them all out. In 1945-50 diaries were all true. My investigation, I'm a certified paralegal private investigator by trade. I've done it for 40 years. My investigation always brought me back to the same portal when I saw Mary fall in love with my father, Art. They brushed arms on this very terminal, and it was a spark of love at first sight. Art escorted Mary to her stage performances, became very sweet on her. And then it happened. The long wooden pews are where they sat, where I saw my mother Mary told Art she was pregnant with me. I heard him say, never fear. I'm gonna go get the cash and we'll get married and we'll live happily ever after. I was on my way to my mission to investigate. I arrived in time to watch my father Art with his girlfriend Rose, seen on the right side of this pew, scurrying through the crowd. Art told Rose to wait for him. I followed Art. My 23-year-old father got his gun and shoved it in the face of a woman bank teller the first day on her job. He stole $1,083, big stakes in those days. Then came back to get Rose. He bought 2 tickets to New York. And they spent all the money except $200 when they flew back to O'Hare Airport. The FBI was waiting. Federal judge sentenced Art to 3 years in prison. My mother found out when she heard it on the news. She saved 69 love letters, and I have them. And she tied them in her shoebox, and I still read them all. I understand now that my mother never stopped loving him. Now, I come to reality. I'm no longer a time traveler. I'm Sharon Ivanhoe McPhee, and I'm going to tell you the rest of the story. And you're not going to like it. Help me here, please. We're falling out. I'm not nervous, it's windy. All right. I am the daughter of Bonnie and Clyde. I found the shoebox. And I found the newspaper articles with 69 prison love letters from my father, Art. Mary, my mother, after reading all the newspaper articles, she fell into that deep depression. My mother fell in love with Art, her cowboy sweetheart, her first love. She sang when she won those contests to him. She was looking at him. She loved him. She would soon learn that the hardest of ways, people in love are deceptive. Art was not who he was supposed to be. Mary panicked. When she missed her menstrual period, she became withdrawn, sickly, depressed, truly brokenhearted because she was disgraced by her church and society for being unwed and pregnant. Mary sank slowly in that dark, confusing, painful place. No one can understand nor relate because, yes, she accepted the path that she was on. She silently tucked away Art's 69 love letters hidden in her shoebox with ribbons. I cried when I discovered them. As it was in 1950, women found to be pregnant when not married were paraded into homes for unwed mothers. Organized by Catholics, Mary was sent to Misericordia, home for unwed mothers. Contracts were signed. Returned for medical care, room and board. Mary endured back-breaking work. She scrubbed floors, she washed walls, she scrubs toilets. All for the medical care, for the adoption of her unborn to a man and a woman, for a decent upbringing. Shame, belittlement was all that the nuns preached. Whores, not worthy of keeping their unborn child. Some girls, it was whispered, they ran away and they had abortions, and with coat, wire hangers, umbrella spikes. Fetuses tossed out like garbage into slag valleys, molten piles of smoldering molten steel, or died in city gangways and alleyways. Suicide was always on their minds. Helplessness, they ate poisons along with a painful death. They'll do anything to abort, puncturing organs by inserting anything in their vagina to bring out the mass that's growing in their womb. Your options was to risk a back alley abortion or be ostracized by our unforgiving society. I know, I suffered through it. Unbeknownst to them, all of them, Mary's father refused to give up to these terms, so he told me stories about how he snatched me out of Misericordia's nursery under his coat, fought like the Dickens to the bitter end, determining that the upbringing of his grandchild will be his family's responsibility alone, despite the law! We didn't care about the law! We're women! And he did. My grandparents raised all their kids in the backyards of the world-renowned Wisconsin Steel Works, where Slag Valley got its name, the poorest, smallest, neglected neighborhood on the south side of Chicago in 1950s. Mary continued playing her guitar, singing for commitments that paid well. She saved money and moved into her own house a few blocks away, but it was agreed that I stayed to live with my grandparents. Mary fell in love with a musician. No access to birth control. She missed her period again. And Loverboy was gone like the wind. Her mind recalls stories of ancient potions, abortion methods she learned all about for women who tried and succeeded and not had to spend 9 months in Misericordia. Mary gathered herbs and she ingested them. And when that failed, mirrors to stuff things in her vagina. When that failed, an attempt to abort, she trusted live. Sorry, I'm going. When that failed, juicing live would do the trick. All that in vain, because my sister was born mentally challenged and suffered paralyzing grand mal seizures. Mary never forgave herself. This is the truth. Now, a single mother, but a high school graduate, Mary got a job as a long-distance telephone operator, Rogers Telephone Answering Service in downtown Chicago, when she met affluent members of society. Doctors, lawyers, politicians. Among many women operators, her best friend Joyce. At a Christmas party, downtown hotel, Mary played her guitar where a prominent doctor fell in love over heels with her. They dated, they developed a deep relationship, but understanding that his medical practice was his passion and priority, and her music was hers. Then, it happened. Joyce got pregnant and needed an abortion. It was a well-known fact that listening to party line conversation on those calls, it was very quite evident that it was a no-no, but they did it anyway, that abortions were being administered illegally. Anyway, despite the law. Mary wanted to help Joyce not suffer the misericordia misguided abortion methods, was convinced that her best friend needed counseling by Dr. Budd. Mary pleaded stories about the home for unwed mothers, along with a self-induced failed abortion she suffered. She realized that she had to go to Dr. Budd on behalf of Joyce so she didn't suffer the same fate. A bond was forged that day. Dr. Budd, a staunch believer in women's rights, respected surgeon, understood that too many stories of women who died after back alley abortions. Mary brought Joyce to his hospital, assisting Dr. Budd with illegal abortions, which became her endeavored belief that a woman's choice was more important to bring back their menstrual period safely, leaving the misery of an unwanted pregnancy behind. Mary was not a successful manager at Rogers, and she opened Mary's Coffee Shop and became president of Citizens Band Radio Club. She operated her uncle's Victor's 24-hour cab and towing company for the next 10 years. So Mary achieved a measure of status in the neighborhood. While her popularity grew, her ventures grew. Mary's acquaintances multiplied across the board, rich or poor. People of all colors, backgrounds, respected politicians, police, firemen, city workers all became associated with many benefits of befriending Mary. Life was fast and furious. Mary stabilized. Nevertheless, she had a supportive family and friends in high and low places with no financial problems anymore. Restaurant business was successful. Friendships were blossoming. Connections were made with the butcher and the baker and the candlestick maker. And Mary's fondness of music ordered a jukebox made with the pretty lights and the frills and the whistles. The nice mafia band guy even gave us a jukebox along the countertops in our restaurant. And a sawdust pinball machine. You remember those, right? And the cigarette machines. We got a new cigarette machines from the mafia guy. He was so nice. But that wasn't all he was peddling. A memo from Madam Joyce, now the owner of several upscale prostitution houses and gambling, was branching out, and they needed an associate madam who was able to perform abortions. The bond was forged years ago. You heard it. Mary was called upon to perform abortions for an elite clientele, and I became a student of these and a witness of these goings-ons. My heightened awareness, daunting reality that the unprivileged women struggled to support themselves, to be in control of their own bodies while facing the sign of the times, their futures. With Mary, I accompanied many women to the hospital to await Dr. Budd's ultrasounds as he trained Mary as his assistant to perform abortions. I held their hand during and after of recovery. At secretive locations, I trained as a nurse. I boiled the water in an old-fashioned pot. I placed the sterilized medical instruments in a sterile towel. I understood to bring back woman's period, as it were, and abortion was to save her life, her choice, her body. I was in charge of the secret family suitcase that contained abortion instruments given to me by Dr. Budd, who became a martyr to me. I radiated in confidence. In 1968, this abortion story became my own. Someone snitched. Mary became a fugitive, and a warrant was out there for her arrest. And at the same time, I was graduating from my high school. James H. Bowen, crowned queen of CVS's military ball by my boyfriend's high school. 2 lives I led. The traditional one, raised from a respectable immigrant Catholic family, made my communion, my confirmation, excellent grades, college bound, and my secret underground family. Life brought us on a silver platter. I wasn't torn between, I was loyal to both. Mary, protected by fate, paid a very high-priced lawyer, guaranteed by the powers that be, the mafia dudes. Mary was released. No evidence, but that wasn't enough. Madam Joyce, it was rumored stiff by the mafia, was thrown off a 13-story building in Aruba because they accused her of skimming off the top of her gambling debts, but authorities in the newspaper articles claimed that she fell off the top of the building to strut over and reading a love letter and just fell! Just dropping it! Broken-hearted, she fell over the edge. That's not true. None of that was true. Best friend, officer of the law, good cop, bad cop, hitman, bagman, our bodyguard, Kane, was gunned down in cold blood. Our close cousin, who owned Kingfish Chicken's Fish, was robbed and gunned down. Endless tragedies, over and over and over, it happened. Life's fast lane was coming to an end. In 1971, the cops raided our house over a bogus tip for the suitcase was never found. No evidence was ever obtained, except it lived in my heart. Life went on, repressed from my conscious reality. Today I'm enraged at my age to see the paradigm shift that we fought so vehemently for is in jeopardy of being taken away by the zealots who want dominion over our bodies. We were burdened with secret abortions until 1973 when Roe versus Wade changed our lives. I look back now how ashamed I was and proud of my life. When I was in 1968, when my local newspapers' headlines were both my picture as 1968 military ball queen and my mother's mugshot on the police bulletin board for abortion. In 1972, after the court case was over, headlines of stormtrooper cops raided the guns drawn, revealed police entered with a faulty warrant. How about that? We were vindicated! As my mother Mary demanded full headline restrictions in our local newspaper. You know how those, they always have the gossip in there? Nevertheless, arrests were made. Our homes were thoroughly ransacked. Evidence surfaced that the cops planted marijuana on my little brother. He claimed my mother's prescription pills were dangerous drugs pinned on me. And he ordered me to call my stepfather working at Wisconsin Steelworks to come home and open up his legally gun cabinet or they would smash it to smithereens. And when I called my father, he came home, they did it anyway. They smashed it to smithereens anyway. But they were looking for the abortion suitcase and they thought it was there. My bonds were forged as keeper of our secret suitcase my entire life. No, that's my destiny. No one ever found it. No proof exists today that it even exists because I hid it. Until America decides to challenge Roe versus Wade. So that's why I'm here today. I am partially blind, but I can see past the haters today. With the fears of this pandemic, even with those fears, I came here today. Death, I'm deaf, but I can hear the young women's future screams crying for help. In a paradigm shift that I lived through. So, I will no longer stay the course and be quiet. I kept a plethora of anonymous secrets, those of desperate, no-name women for far too long. They know who they are. I held their hand. We saved their lives. My secret family in our world, this world. There were secret families before ours, and there are going to be secret families after ours all over the world. There will always be secret families, secret suitcases. If Roe versus Wade is challenged, mine will just be history, will just be her story. But now, it's my story! And I'm gonna fight with you, and I'm gonna be in every turn of the way. And it's gonna be my story you're gonna be listening to because we can't go back. I am 1950s daughter of Bonnie and Clyde!